I'm joking. Over the next couple of weeks, it's a 5-part series. We're going to be looking at solving problems. And I feel like it's kind of unfair to look at solving problems if you don't take into account the problems that you cannot solve, because there's a lot of problems you're going to face in life that you can't do anything about. And it would do well to remember, what do you do in situations that you can't resolve? So let's keep going. I grew up in a homeschooled, very sheltered environment. I know a lot of people tell me all these horror stories of them in high school, and I'm just like, I was just reading a book and playing outside. Like, that just wasn't me. Very, I'm not complaining about it. My whole world consisted of my backyard, so it's like, everyone I knew was at the church. Like, I didn't know people like out there in the wild world. They were dangerous. And the only people that were safe to talk to were people who were in the church. So, but being a pastor's kid, everything I did was analyzed, and everything I did was wrong. If you've ever been a pastor's kid, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People kind of get this idea, when you've been in church for so long, you kind of develop this attitude that I'm super duper spiritual. And then if you don't have kids, you develop this extra layer of arrogance where you think, I am the perfect parent. And see what happens, and I warn you, all you people who don't have kids, your first one's going to be spectacular, okay? The labor is going to go easy, and you're going to be a great parent to that one child, and you're going to have this false sense of confidence. I've got this covered because I'm a great parent. And so then you're going to have a second one, but then you're going to realize I'm in way over my head, and I have no idea what I'm doing. But it'll be too late to pull the plug. I mean, it's just too late. You got these two monsters running around. You're like, oh man, what do I do? How to get out of this? And it's right around that time when you're scratching your head trying to figure out how to get out of it, that you've got two more, and you're like, how did I get to 4? And so it's all downhill from there. You learn to fall asleep at 6 o'clock in the afternoon and wake up in the middle of the night to clean up throw up. It's just what you do. And but being a pastor's kid, everything I did was analyzed, and all of it was wrong. The people who think that they could be a better pastor are people who've never been a pastor, and the people who think that they could be a better parent are usually people who have never been a parent. So then, obviously, the obvious conclusion, I started having panic attacks. Didn't see that one coming. And then I was working 2 jobs in high school, and then I started going to college, and I was still working, 2 jobs plus helping out with my dad whenever he unfortunately needed me. I hated construction so much. He always talks about going back to construction. I'm like, why? Wouldn't you much rather just go to some kind of like detention camp and have them pull out your fingernails or something? That sounds a lot funner than construction. That's like the worst job you can do. And I'm including that job, a very unfortunate job for this weather. The person who holds out the sign in the middle by the road, man, I would say construction is worse than that job. And we all know how terrible it is to be that person in 108-degree weather. It got to 808 today? Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I hope you guys are drinking plenty of water. Anyways, and so then the church that I was going to, get this is a riot. Now, this is definitely an opportunity for bitterness, but I think that I don't have bitterness just because I say that I don't think so, and everybody else has a problem with bitterness. Anyways, so what happened is the church that I was going to at the time, they started getting upset with me because I wasn't there as often as I used to be when I was going through anxiety and depression and all this different stuff. It's like, oh boy. And the thing is, that's sometimes what we do. We get in church for so long and we just kind of stop learning and start becoming like masters over everybody else, you know what I mean? Like, we know how everybody else should conduct their affairs. Even if our life is in shambles, I know how everybody else needs to run their life, you know what I mean? And we kind of get this idea that I don't go to the Bible so as to learn how I need to change. I go to the Bible so as to see how everybody else is doing everything wrong. and so I can get more fuel to throw on the fire of somebody who's already upset. And it's just a very unfortunate thing that happens. It's this subtle little transition that happens where you go from the thankfulness of what God has done for you and in you into this steady tradition and religion, this deadness, where you don't want to feel guilty and shameful, so you just kind of I'm okay here. You know what I mean? Just kind of blind yourself to the fact that God still has somewhere to get you to. Obviously, I got bitter once again. Didn't see that one coming. And started thinking that Christians were the most easily offended group. Everything offends Christians. Well, remember, my whole life consisted of the church. So it was easy for me to think that there was only the Christians who had the easily offended problem, because that's the only people I knew. So obviously I did what most people who are bitter and discouraged do. I left the church, and I thought, I don't need them anyways. I'll just love God, and that's good enough. I don't have to love people, right? The Bible clearly says that. It says something against that, doesn't it? So then I learned much later, like is in probably this last week, that it's just people who are easily offended, not Christians. And boy, that was a moment of realization. I was like, wow, man, oh man. So okay, that kind of changes things. Now, this was kind of discouraging for me, coming to this place of bitterness, because ever since I was a kid, I always lived and breathed for the good of the church. Everything I did was to try and, my whole life was the church. For those of you who aren't real churchy people, it might be hard for you to understand, if you don't really, if it's not like something that you grew up with or something that you're real, I don't want to say dedicated, that makes it sound like I'm better than you or something, something that you're real persnickety about, that kind of stuff. It might be a little bit odd to you to hear somebody say, living your whole life for the church, why? And so I tried to live above reproach. I tried to never offend anyone. So if you're over the age of 20, you probably just heard what I said and said, that's nonsense. How are you going to go your whole life not offending anyone? Well, so I basically took a few verses out of context to support my theory that I needed to not offend anyone. And I'm not saying you should go around offending people, but there are extremes. Did you know that there's extremes? Most of what you're going to see on social media is called an extreme. Okay, just in case you didn't know that. So let's look at this. 1 Corinthians 8:13. Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never eat meat lest I make my brother stumble. And all the vegans are saying, hallelujah. And all the carnivores are saying, what? 1 Corinthians 10:32-33. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Now, this sounds like what he's saying is exactly what I said. Don't ever offend anybody, and that's going to be an attainable goal. Well, you should read the rest of the book of 1 Corinthians, because that's very clearly not what he's saying. Like, for instance, where he says, I've decided to hand this person over to Satan. Wow, there's a whole 180 from the whole not offending somebody thing, huh? Okay, so in my attempt to do something good, I missed the big picture. Paul wasn't teaching us that we need to cater to the easily offended. And this is a hard part to lead this series off with, because it's going to sound like I'm telling you this. Try to irritate people, and then when they get mad, laugh at them. But that's actually not what I'm saying, okay? That's totally not what I'm saying. And so I'm trying to walk real like a ninja, like a fox ninja, okay? We're gonna wheedle our way through this, okay? The big picture that Paul is trying to say is he's not saying cater to the easily offended, because that is a full-time job, and you won't succeed in the end anyways, okay? He's talking about restoring people to God. That's his whole point. And I think that 9:19 kind of clarifies that, but once again, when we have it set in our heart, this is what the Bible is saying, I'm not going to listen to any other opinion, this is what it is, we oftentimes will just completely miss the whole point of the passage. You don't decide what the Bible says and then go to it for support. You go to it and learn, and then that changes your perspective. For though I am free from all, that would be, I'm free from offending people. It's not my burden to bear. I have made myself a servant to all. Do you get what he's saying? I'm free from all, okay? I'm no longer I'm not trying to please people, but I have made myself a servant to them. Why, Paul? Why would you do this? Okay? That I might win more of them. My purpose in doing this is I'm trying to find a way to reconcile people to God. That's his purpose. Okay, so if you kind of just ignore that verse, like I did when I was a kid, it will leave you very upset. And if you try to live your life for the approval of others, you will fall into one of two traps. Most likely, you'll fall into the first one, and then the second one, and then the first one. Trying to irritate people or walking on eggshells. If you live your life for the approval of other people, you will either end up, number one, just trying to irritate people, because you're going to get irritated that they're always so easily offended. Or number two, you're going to be walking on eggshells. You're not going to get to do anything. It's going to be the red tape of death. You're going to be skirting around issues all the time. You'll never have genuine friendships. You'll never be able to do anything for God because you'll be held down by, what if I offend somebody? Boy, I tell you what, if you want to talk about walking through a minefield, try being a pastor at this time. Nothing's right. I mean, cheese and crackers, Batman. You've got people saying you need to preach this, and people saying you need to preach this, and people saying, and it's just like, oh my goodness, I thought I was supposed to preach Jesus. But evidently I have to preach opinions on all these things, from politics to racial wars and all these different things. And it's like, I just want to talk about Jesus. Can we stop talking about viruses and masks for 5 seconds and talk about Jesus? Can we do that? And it's like there's this constant like criticism of, if you don't say anything, you're condoning it, and then if you say something, you're just belaboring the point. Move on. And it's like, I don't know what to do anymore. So okay, trying to irritate others. This is actually the opposite of what Jesus did. They're forgetting that Jesus loved his betrayer until the end. He knew that Judas was going to betray him. He handpicked Judas. And even up till the point of Judas betraying him, he still loved him and served him. And he never said, go hang yourself, Judas. Judas went and killed himself on his own. Peter betrayed Jesus too, but he welcomed him back, so I don't think he would have not welcomed Judas back had he went. And so that kind of leaves us in a little bit of a un-Jesus walk. So, okay, the other option would be walking on eggshells. The problem with this is that it consumes your purpose in life, and you will fail anyways. Your whole purpose will be not to do what you should be doing, not to do what God has appointed you and called you and blessed you and equipped you to do, your natural talents, your God-given talents, your skills, or something that God has called you up and above and beyond what your natural capabilities are. It won't be that. It'll be, how many can I not offend? And your whole purpose in life will be tainted with this. You'll have no drive in life, because your purpose isn't to accomplish what God has called you to accomplish. It's to make sure that you don't offend anybody. Well, good luck with that. Being a people pleaser is a huge trap, and I'm just going to look at 2 verses that give a great example of this. 1 Samuel 15:24, I have sinned, I have violated the Lord's commandment, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. It's a trap. Or if you're a Star Wars fan, it's a trap. Proverbs 29:25, fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety. Fearing people is a dangerous trap. You're going to trap yourself. Get out, run away. So then we get to Philippians 2:15, which to me as a kid seemed like, once again, the thing about you need to live your life to try not to offend anybody, okay? Now, it's once again, I'm not saying offend people, but when your purpose in life is not offending people, you miss your purpose in life. There's a big difference there, okay? Now, so that you may become blameless and pure. But here's the problem that took me a long time to realize, guys. Blameless is not perfect. That was a long time that it took me to get that. When he says be blameless, he didn't say be perfect. Those are 2 different things. So let me give you some examples. As a pastor, it's probably not a great idea that I lose my temper at my kids, right? However, did you know that I lose my temper at my kids? I got 5 of them. It's just a matter of when will I go off at this point. When you've got that many kids and they're all running and Daddy, do this and spend your money and do this, and I'm like, It's like on that movie, what was it called? Birds by Hitchcock. With the birds all, and he's all hiding in the telephone. How stupid was that movie? But anyways, it's like that. You got all these different monsters, and then there's poop coming out of that one and throw up coming out of that one, and you're just like, Gracie, I got to go to work. I'll be back. And she's like, when? Next year. Next year, I'll be back eventually. I'm not taking a map or my phone. But then at the same time, I think we could all know that it would be wrong for a pastor to be sleeping around, for instance, right? If I'm cheating on my wife, I got like 3 girlfriends on this, maybe 2 girlfriends, but not 3 girlfriends, definitely not, right? And, that would be kind of an example of not being blameless. This pastor over here, he's over there cheating on his wife. Not blameless. This pastor over here lost his temper. I'm not trying to condone being a short-tempered, irritable person, but I mean, I feel like, everybody's gonna have that moment. That doesn't mean you're not blameless. It just means you're a person. So I hate to rip that Band-Aid off. It's like that moment in life when you realize that you're not immortal. And you're like, I'm getting old and I'm dying. When did this happen? I thought I was a kid. I remember being a kid having toys. What happened? I'm dying. And then the doctor's like, well, no, it's just a slow, steady process. It's just arthritis. It's death, doctor. It's death. And it always makes me have little flashbacks to Star Trek, There's nothing I can do, Jim. No, please. Please do something for my caloric intake. And then you start having to count calories. And I cycle now, which is a fancy term for I bike. And evidently you're supposed to be counting calories with that. Whoops. Somebody didn't tell me that. Evidently, if you don't have enough calorie intake while you're biking for over an hour, it's like bad or something. I don't know. But whatever. So anyways, the difference between being above reproach or blameless and being above nitpicking. Okay? There's a big difference between being above reproach, living blameless, and being above nitpicking. Okay? Just to kind of clarify for you, you will never be above nitpicking. Someone will always find something wrong with you. Just in case you didn't know. Okay? And you parents, have you ever made a mistake parenting? Yeah, okay, yeah, it's okay. It happens. Shake it off, move on. But then if you're that parent who's like actively beating your child, well, that would be different. See the difference between nitpicking and being blameless. See what I mean? Like, there's just a big difference there. Okay, let me give you a couple examples just because they tickle me in a way that I like being tickled. There was a girl that really was not into church at all, but she came, and she would come with her grandma, and she really just wasn't into it, but she went because her grandma wanted her to. So she decides this one time to wear this dress, just because. I mean, trying to look nice or something, So she comes in this dress. She gets in the door, and this person who's been in churches all their life hops to the opportunity to tell her something that she's doing wrong with wearing the dress, how she's not supposed to walk like that with the dress on. I mean, just goes down the list of all the things that she's doing wrong, and it's like, you missed that point, didn't you? It's you're listening to the wrong music. You shouldn't be listening to that kind of music. You have the wrong hairstyle. You have the wrong clothes. Like when I missed a few services for health reasons, and instead of saying, "Hey, are you okay? Can I pray for you?" they meet me at the door and say, "Hey, you can't do that anymore because you're not being faithful enough." It's like, wow, you're missing the point of the church when you get to that level of just legal, I guess is the word. It just gets where it's not even. There's no point to going to that kind of a church, and so some people will be offended by anything, really. And so there's just a few questions you could ask yourself. Are you always offending people? Or, are you always being offended? Is this like a steady thing? Are you easily irritated by either your family or the news or social media? Okay? And then the second question, are you having to regularly change your friends because you can't have anybody close to you because you're just a nasty person to be around? These are just some good things to stop and say, have I had the same friends, close friends, for over 5 years? And are they in a place that I myself want to be? Because check it out. You are whoever you are around. They tell you in those leadership books, if you read any of them, they always tell you that if you want to be successful, hang around with people who are successful. You don't hang around with people who have given up on their dreams, people who aren't going anywhere, people who are just cruising through life. That's not going to get you to go to the next caliber as a leader. And it's the same thing as in life. I mean, if you hang around people who do drugs, for instance, you're probably going to get on drugs. I mean, it's not that hard of a concept. And I will say this, but the people who are easily offended often offend others, sometimes on purpose. And this is the thing that surprises me: easily offended people who purposely offend people just so that they can pass the blame. It's your fault. They purposely irritate people just so that they can say it's your fault, instead of just acknowledging that maybe it's their fault. I don't know why we do these kinds of things. It's just something we do. 2 Corinthians 6:3 says this: we put no stumbling block in anyone's path so that our ministry will not be discredited. So what Paul is talking about here, okay, so you're not living for the pleasure of other people. You're not living for your purpose in life is not to offend people, okay? But with that being said, we're also not trying to irritate people, and that's what Paul's saying here. We're not trying to put a stumbling block in there. We're not trying to get them off course. Or here, 2 Timothy 2:24, which I hope each of you will write down next time before you get into a Facebook argument. I'm looking at anybody who has Facebook, and I don't know who it is, so just pretend like I'm staring at you, okay? And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome. Now, some people read this and they say, okay, he's definitely just talking about pastors. Tell me how that makes sense. Hey, Pastor, I quit for just like a day or two. There's some people I really need to chew out. I'll come back and reapply for the job, okay? But must be kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful. So that takes us to another verse, which I really feel like is kind of taken out of context to kind of put an unfair... Let me give you the context. People are going and not showing love to people, and then pretending like they're super dedicated to God when they can't stand people and they treat people wrong. And so then Jesus says this: therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Now, what we've done is we've removed the entire context and said this: if anybody ever has a problem with you, it's your life, it's your purpose in life to flock to people who are easily offended by you and make it your life purpose to make them not offended. What? What? If you've ever been in ministry, if you've ever been a pastor, if you've ever been a parent, if you've ever done anything in your life, you know people are going to be offended. You should try to irritate people, and you should try to do whatever possible to rectify the situation. However, you need to know that it's not always going to work like that. So let's look at the context of this verse. It starts in verse 21. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. So, okay, message number one, don't hurt people, right? I mean, but even the wicked teach this. This isn't that big of a request. Okay, so then we get to verse 22. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Okay, so this takes us to a whole different area. This is now, don't just not hurt people, but also don't have a bad attitude towards them. So this is kind of what happened, okay? Actions come from attitudes, which come from thoughts. Okay, I'll say it again. Actions come from attitudes, which come from thoughts. If you want to change what you're doing, change what you're believing and thinking, and that will change how you're feeling, which will eventually change how you're acting. It's kind of like a flow chart. Pretty. Okay, so don't have a bad attitude. Okay, all right. And then, okay, so that even if they are wrong, still still don't have a bad attitude towards them. Do you know how hard it is to not have a bad attitude towards someone who's wrong, and then they have a bad attitude towards you, and then they tell other people, and they start telling people stuff that you didn't actually do. So you've got like this compounded problem of them doing the wrong thing, and you're like, what? That's wild. But of course, there's no way to win that. I mean, if you try and prove your point, it's just going to make you seem petty, and if you let it go, it's just going to make you seem like you actually did the thing. There's no winning. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, "Raka," is answerable to the court. Now, this is a term that we really just don't understand. It's an Aramaic term. It's not really a direct translation. That's why they don't actually translate it there, because there is no real word-for-word equivalent, which is the problem with any translation. But it's more of like a term of a same thing you would say if you're angry with someone. Okay? Okay, so let's move on. And anyone who says, "You fool," will be in danger of the fire of hell. Now, I once again went to a church, the same church, that they taught that literally the word fool was a sin. Completely missed the point of the passage. Okay, so you're a fool. I mean, you're an idiot. See what I mean? Like, you haven't actually circumnavigated the issue. You had a bad attitude towards someone, and you shot your mouth off at them. So just because you didn't use the exact word fool, that somehow makes you not guilty? What? What? That's wild. Once again, these are things that we don't actually pay attention to the context of the verse. I choose to believe that the word fool is the issue here. Okay. Well, then I have some other colorful words that I like to call you. True love for God, and we see this in verse 23 through 24, which I just read about leaving your gift at the altar. True love for God is shown by how we treat others. Did you get that? Okay. So then that takes us to the last two verses of this little section. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. You can't change someone else's mind. That's true. But your pride will ensure that they don't change their mind. When you go into a situation with pride, let me guarantee you something. They'll do something just to irritate you. Because they don't like that attitude, that I'm better than you, I'm so sophisticated, and you need to just drop it because I'm so much more mature than you. Yeah, that really doesn't work with people too well. It really doesn't. I mean, there's just this art of debasing yourself when you have done something actually wrong. But when you actually mean it, it really means something. You can say all the right words. I mean, you see politicians do it all the time. If I just do the right thing, if I go through all the right motions, if I say the right words, you're just going to believe that I'm sorry. But when you actually genuinely are sorry, that really means something, and people can definitely tell the difference. Definitely can tell the difference. So why is it impossible to not offend people? Well, let me kind of give you an idea here, okay? If you try to help someone who is addicted to drugs, a lot of times the person who you're trying to help will get mad. If they don't get mad, then people who are not drug addicts will get mad at you for trying to help the drug addicts. Did you catch that? You're in a bad way if you do, and you're in a bad way if you don't. That's kind of what it comes down to. And so then you're stuck with this, okay, so what do I do? Well, if you're living a life to please people, you're kind of stuck. If you're living your life for God, well, then you're not really stuck. God has called me to do this. There are going to be people who oppose me. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it with the right attitude. So then, when the people get mad at you, you will try to resolve the conflict, and it'll cause greater conflict a lot of the times because, well, I'm not going to get into that because there's a lot of different reasons. So then they're going to mistreat you, and you're going to have to forgive them and show love and help those who want it and be available for those who don't want your help. And that's going to be difficult. Very difficult. And what's even worse is you can't gossip or complain about them. That's what's even worse. If you could just say a couple cutting remarks, and that'd be so much better. So much better. It's like, you know, if you've been married, you know, where like your spouse will say that like they have to get the last word in or something. And then like you want to outdo them or you know, you want to have that power of the last word. So then you're like, you're just like your mother. And you'll slam the door. And then you remember, I live here. Where am I going to go? I just told off my wife and slammed the door. Where am I going to go? So then you like sit there walking around the yard like trying to figure out, if I just walk back in, I'm going to look like a total idiot. I left my keys to the car inside, so I can't drive somewhere. I guess I'll go for a walk. But then you realize it's the middle of the day and it's 108 degrees, and you're like, wow, I really messed myself over on this one. So just to get a little bit more personal, there was a drug addict that I was actually, you know, not thinking. Do you know if you just go into something and give somebody advice, a lot of times it doesn't go well? Yeah, well, we all make mistakes. So I go into it and I try to give this person advice. They got mad. Duh, because I led in with trying to pretend like I knew everything. When you give advice to somebody who doesn't ask for it first, they're going to think that you know it all. It's going to put an instant barrier. So they got mad. I apologized, and I tried to just smooth it over. I tried to fix the issue. Well, that didn't really work. They just got mad at me for that. And then they started calling me names, and I was like, oh, okay, how do I get out of this? Is there like an escape hatch? And, it didn't go very well. So then I just tried the next step, which is just dropping it and moving on. Okay, well, you know, all right. Let them have the last word, and you walk away. Be the bigger person is how they tell you. Well, then they started following me around, and then they started bad-mouthing me to people, and then they started going online to leave me bad reviews, and I was like, wow, really? And it just kind of escalated there. Another example that I can think of is I wasn't actually trying to help a drug addict this time. I was talking about trying to help a drug addict, and this guy comes and he says, you know, I used to work in a prison, you can't do anything for him. Okay, so I was like, what do you suggest? And he's like, there's nothing you can do, just leave him. It's like, okay. I disagree, and I'm going to keep trying to help them. So then he called me an idiot. He hasn't talked to me since. He got unreasonably mad, and then, as if all that wasn't bad enough, he did what really hurt my feelings. He unfriended me on Facebook. I'm sorry, I couldn't say that. What have we become, guys? That blocking on a social media has become the ultimate diss. It's like, have we really guaranteed our whole life, like revolved our whole world around Facebook? I mean, come on. Go outside. Go for a walk. Anyways, so then Romans 12:18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So then what we do is we do something along the lines of this. Well, I tried to make peace. They're just a bitter, nasty person. It's all their fault. I think that maybe you didn't try to make peace. Oh, no, I tried. And so now I'm gossiping and complaining about them because they just can't be. Well, I think that once again, you kind of missed the point there. It's not, get over the idea of I've had enough of this person. But there will be some times when you have to get distance from people. There are some people who are just on a self-destructive course. Everything you say will be wrong, and everything you do will be wrong. And the first step of problem solving is what we're talking about right now, that you can't try and please people. You can't win every situation. There's going to be situations that come by that you can't win. It's a hard thing to learn, but it's a necessary thing to learn. So let's go over just a summation of this, okay? Live at peace with people, okay? Live at peace. Number 2, resolve conflicts. If you at all can, and keep trying unless you just hit a brick wall, in which case just kind of leave it alone. Number 3, watch your attitude. If you can't fix it, and even if you can fix it, either way, watch your attitude. You don't want this attitude. You don't want this to happen. I resolved the issue, but I'm irritated because of how much I had to humble myself to resolve the issue. So I'm still mad at them, even though the issue has been resolved. I'm telling you, our minds cook up all kinds of things. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's just ridiculous. Well, you're just ridiculous for trying to lie to us about you being those things in your head having. And then number 4, just live for God. Live for God. So this is the summation of all these different things. And it only took me like 5 hours to get that out, but I like scenery. If there's nothing you can do, then there's nothing you can do. But here's the thing. People often say that there's nothing that they can do too soon. And then because they're too prideful to admit that they have an attitude problem, they refuse to rectify it because they're just too prideful. So be careful about saying there's nothing I can do. Sometimes, yes, there absolutely is nothing you can do, and just move on. You don't want to devote years and years and years of your life trying to please somebody. And if you keep going after, like, please forgive me, it gets to be the point where it actually starts working against you. So just, try to make peace. If it's not possible, move on. Okay? So let's see a few things of how we can apply this. Besides the obvious way of try to offend people. When people are offended, they act differently than they normally would. Did you know that? Did you know that? Okay, well, now you do. And when someone has a history of being mistreated by others, it's something that they've continually dealt with, especially when you're talking about childhood trauma that has been with them as they developed into an adult. And then you have abandonment issues as an adult, and it just builds on. We're not robots, guys. I mean, that leaves an effect on someone. How we treat our kids is extremely important. And extremely important. And it's just amazing how the battles that we fight as an adult are basically our childhood battles that are just complicated in our minds. It's just amazing. When people are offended, they act differently than they normally would. That's just something you need to know. And then the next thing there, it's easy to discredit someone because they are overreacting. It's much harder to consider why they are overreacting. And in case you don't connect the two dots here, someone is offended, so then they're acting irrationally. And it's easy to say something along the lines of this, they're just overreacting. Of course they're overreacting. Their feelings are hurt. Well, there's nothing I could do. They were just not, maybe you didn't go at the right time. Did you ever think of that? Like, I'll give you an example. Well, I made my wife mad, so I woke her up at 2 in the morning. You all right? Okay, night. Maybe consider your timing. Just, it's one of those things you ought to consider. So much as you are able, keep trying to make peace in bad situations. And listen and observe. Listening is that skill of shutting your mouth and watching their mouth move. And then actually paying attention to the things that come out of their mouth. That's the hard part. I can watch somebody's lips move. That's easy. It's trying to discern the words and then learn from them. That's the hard part. And then the next thing here, besides just listening, observe. Did you know that sometimes there'll be what somebody says and what they actually mean? And then you can actually, if you pay attention, you can actually see something that's rippling under the surface. But the thing is, it's kind of like trying to find an alligator in a swamp. There's all this other crap that's like blocking the way from the alligator. But if you look close enough, you can see that little guy. You can see him. But the problem is you really have to pay attention. And the problem is you have to get over yourself. Because if you sit there stewing about how mad you are at them, you're never going to see the alligator, and it's going to chomp you on the foot. Listen and observe. If your attempts are making things worse, change your tactics or leave it alone. And we're going to go ahead and stop there. We'll build on this more over the next couple weeks. How do you resolve conflicts and all these different things? We'll look at that, okay? And so that's where we're going to stop here.